Hi guys, welcome to today's video. In today's video, we'll be talking about the state of movies in 2022. So I recently just watched the new 2022 Scream remake or reboot or sequel. I'm not really sure which to call it because it incorporated elements that you would find in all three. While it did scratch that nostalgic itch, it nowhere near lived up to the original, which is actually pretty disappointing, but it's not something that I'm not used to already. I say this because in the last couple of years, every movie that has come out is just a quick nostalgia cash grab. If you don't know, a nostalgia cash grab is basically any major movie studio pulling out one of their older franchises, bringing in characters, quote-unquote legacy characters, and having them show up in a new iteration of what made the original great. Now, on paper, this seems like a really good idea because it would let you breathe life into an old franchise once again, but the way they go about it by adding or changing the story or not including certain parts that made the original great is in most cases actually doing more harm to the franchise than good. So unless you just have not really been keeping up with movies, you should have your own examples of this. For me, right off the top of my head, I can think of Disney with its live-action Princess remake and the Star Wars franchise. At first, the Disney live-action remakes were actually pretty good movies, but as time went on, they just kept cranking them out so fast that each time they made a new one, they would lose the story or they would lose an essential part that gave the original that special touch. The Star Wars franchise suffered the same kind of fate. As they kept making more films, they started to lose the sense of story and plotline. The enemies never really seemed clear or defined, so their character development started lacking. So in my opinion, I don't think that they were able to reach the same kind of feeling or tone that the original 6 movies gave off. One redeeming quality is their Disney Plus TV series. Most of their Star Wars TV series are actually pretty well written and well developed, The Mandalorian being one of them. Hopefully Obi-Wan is also going to be in that same kind of ballpark, but we will definitely just have to wait and see. Now, some of their side projects like Solo and Rogue One were actually just giant clickbait that got to have the Star Wars logo. These two films are probably the worst out of the whole franchise, but Disney isn't the only movie studio that is doing this. They've also tried to reintroduce The Matrix. They've tried to do movies like Total Recall, the Blade Runner series, and unfortunately one of my favorite franchises, the Terminator franchise, was completely destroyed. Not to mention that at one point Universal tried to restart the old school Monsters franchise, and The Mummy, their first film in the series, did so bad that Universal completely just canceled that whole Monsterverse universe that they were trying to create. The worst part of it all is that since they're the only ones creating movies, there's not really much we can do. We have no choice but to show up to the movie theater hoping that this new director or that this new project is actually executed correctly and actually pushes the franchise forward. We will always remember the classics because of how well the story was written, how well their characters were developed, and the fact that the music was actually composed by producers or composers that wanted to leave more of a legacy rather than just make a quick dollar. Personally, I keep holding out hope that movie companies and movie studios will start producing more things like Spider-Man, which is an actual reboot done right. They incorporated legacy characters and brought in other aspects of the Marvel universe that kind of just remade and reamped the Spider-Man franchise. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like this is going to be the case. More often than not, we're left disappointed and end up getting a watered down version of what our classic movies used to be. And now that we've gone over most of the remake reboot movies, let's go ahead and shift our focus to the few originals that have been released in the last couple of years. Sticking with Disney as an example, some of their most recent movies include Encanto, Soul, and Moana. Moana, being the oldest of the three, was actually my favorite. This was because not only are the characters really well developed and have an arc of their own that is actually quite relatable, they also take the time to include a new princess rather than just take an old one and remake her to fit what is socially the norm at the moment. Add to that a great sounding soundtrack and you have yourself an absolute banger. So if Moana was my first, number 2 would definitely have to be Soul. Now, Soul had an immaculate storyline, which honestly I think is one of the best things that Pixar has done in the last couple of years. But the one thing that really did throw me off was the character 22. While I understand that the character 22 is the main story, the arc, if you will, of this whole movie, it honestly went from, oh, this is supposed to be a non-conforming, strong-willed character that is supposed to drive the whole purpose of what it means to be human or to have a soul. but it actually just came off as kind of annoying, immature, arrogant for no reason. And I say this because it was really arrogant without actually having any experience to back that up. And so to me, this was just a big indicator that this character wasn't really well written, because all of a sudden it falls for pizza and good music, two of the most common and relatable things. And so not only is that kind of vibe or that kind of energy not appealing, it is amplified and made even worse by the way the character talks and it just goes about doing things. So, in my opinion, it was what really detracted from the movie. But other than that, man, the music was really great. I really enjoyed, like I said, the story. I just felt like this character could have, they could have changed a few things and they could have added a few things and just made it a little bit better. So, definitely, that's why it takes the number 2 spot. And now, finally, we have to talk about Encanto, which takes the number 3 spot out of the 3 movies and is actually the most recent film. Encanto has actually been pretty well received, so what I'm about to say might offend some people, and I'm sorry for that, guys, but remember, this is just my opinion, and I'm just giving it to you guys how I see things. On paper, Encanto actually has a pretty decent story. The only problem occurs when it comes to its execution. The execution of Encanto, to me, is so poorly written because of the fact that they have so many characters that they are trying to balance and show a little bit of development in each single one. If you notice in the other 2 movies I talked about earlier, there's only about 2 main characters, while in Encanto, there's at least 3 or 4 main characters that actually impact and affect the way the story plays out, which in the end just make the film sound, or the energy that I got off of it was, F you, Grandma, you made us all grow up with crippling anxiety because we all felt like we would never be enough for you or the family. I know that's not how the story actually ends, and that most of the story is that redeeming arc, but overall the kind of taste or the memory that I have of watching it for the first time just ends up boiling down to that. Let's move on to the music. So as for the music, I honestly think it's some of the worst music Disney has ever produced or has ever put into a film. I know a lot of people are loving the Bruno song, and it has surpassed, I guess, Let It Go by the number of times that it's been streamed or something like that. But I honestly can't remember that song at all. And I actually remembered Let It Go in that same context. I remember the Tarzan soundtrack and the Lion King soundtrack and the Brother Bear soundtrack, the Hercules soundtrack. Like, I could sing along to a lot of these songs right off the top of my head. I might not know what the name of the song is, but I could sing along almost word for a good chunk of these of these soundtracks. So that just kind of goes to show, like, I honestly felt that a lot of the music that was written for Encanto was kind of a cop-out. So please, no offense to the producers or anything, but I just think that the quality of music inside this film was some of the worst that I've seen in the last couple of years. That being said, that kind of just wraps it up to why I placed Encanto in the lowest, or the 3rd rank out of the 3 films. I'm not gonna say it's their worst film ever, but it definitely, in my opinion, ranks one of the lowest films recently produced by Disney. I focused on Disney because they have both examples of hit and misses, both in the sequel reboot realm, while also introducing new ideas, even if they aren't properly executed. So in conclusion, the state of movies in 2022 tends to fall into one of 2 categories: the reboot, requel, remake that is just a nostalgic cash grab, or an original that is either gonna hit or miss. And that's basically all we have. We're basically just getting a small trickle of movies here and there, a lot that actually get released straight to home, which is kind of what straight to DVD or straight to VHS was back in the day. It's just been replaced with straight to your streaming service. And so that's what I can actually relate the state of where the movie industry is right now. If you guys have any other thoughts, comments, ideas, any arguments you guys want to go ahead and leave, tell me right down below in the comments, guys. That wraps it up for today's video. I want to say thank you to everybody that's been liking, sharing all my stuff, guys. It means the world to me as always. I'll definitely see you guys in the next one. Take care.